All right, the recording is started. Go ahead, Matt.
Oh, okay. All right. Good morning and welcome to the Seattle Planning Commission's February 26, 2026 meeting of the full commission. I'd like to start with a land acknowledgement. I'd like to humbly recognize that we are on Indigenous land, the traditional and current territories of the Coast Salish people, who have lived on and stewarded these lands and waters since the beginning of time and continue to do so today. We acknowledge the role that traditional Western-centric planning practices have played in harming, displacing, and attempting to erase Native communities. We commit to identifying racist practices and strive to center restorative land stewardship rather than unsustainable and extractive uses of the land. All right. My name is Matt Hutchins. I use he, him pronouns, and I am one of the co-chairs of the Seattle Planning Commission along with Zio Alvarez. All right. So this is an announcement for the members of the public and visitors. First of all, welcome. We're happy to make all commission meetings open to the public. And please note that the Planning Commission does not hold public hearings since the commission is an advisory body, but we do provide recommendations to elected leaders who in turn make the final decisions. We encourage individuals and organizations to provide their comments appropriately to elected officials. This meeting is a hybrid with some individuals participating remotely while others are in person at the boards and commissions room in Seattle, at Seattle City Hall. I would like to, invite a commissioner to choose and briefly speak on one of our color brave space norms that they feel have a particular relevance to today's agenda. I'm going to have to pick on somebody.
I could speak to one, Matt.
Okay, thanks, Dylan.
I'd say maybe we'll create a space for multiple truths. And I think as we look at where we're putting housing in our city, in our centers, in our corridors, there are a huge array of individual residents' experiences and an array of different communities as well. And each of them are going to have their own truth, their own beliefs, and the trick, the challenge, and the opportunity here is to take all these different truths for all these individuals and find a way to bring them together in a hopefully in a holistic sort of view and vision that addresses as many of these truths as possible.
Great, thank you. Let's see if there are any amendments or modifications to the color brave space norms. Raise your hand. Otherwise, I suggest that we agree to all of these norms. Okay. All right, let's do a round of introductions. I've already introduced myself, but if other commissioners can do name, pronouns, neighborhood they're from, and what they do for a living, everyone can get to know each other. Let's see, Zio, as co-chair, you get to be next.
Awesome. Morning, everybody. Zio Alvarez, use she, they pronouns. I live in White Center Highland Park, and for my day job, I'm a designer at Element Architects downtown. I'll pass to Dylan Stevenson.
Good morning, Dylan Stevenson, he, they pronouns. I live in the Chinatown International District, and for my day job, I'm an assistant professor of urban design and planning at the University of Washington, and I will pass it along to Caleb.
Morning, Caleb Twolde, he, him pronouns. I live in Beacon Hill, and I'm an educator at Rainier Scholars. I'll pass it to Deanna.
Good morning, everyone. Diana Quintanar, she, her pronouns. I'm a multimodal transportation planner, and I live in Capitol Hill, and I will ask someone else to help me pass it along.
about Michaela?
Okay, good morning, Michaela Daffern, she, her pronouns. I am here in the Boards and Commissions room. I live in Capitol Hill, and for my day job, I work in regional affordable housing planning. And I'll pass it to Andy.
Hi, Andy Dannenberg, he, him, live in Northeast Seattle, and I teach at the University of Washington in public health and urban planning. I can't tell who's next.
How about Nick?
Good morning, Nick Whipple. I use he, him pronouns. I live in West Seattle in the North Del Ridge neighborhood. And for my day job, I'm a planner on the east side. How about, is Rose on the call still?
Yep.
Yes.
Good morning. I'm Rose Lucella, in pronouns they, them. I am based in the Northgate Licton Springs transition area, and I work as a wetland biologist and permitting specialist for Jacobs for my day job. Pass to Rebecca.
Greetings from the D-line of my name is Rebecca Brew. These are pronouns. I live in the Brown Hill area. My great job is working on that. Oh, I think Dylan G has a
Hey everybody, Dylan Glosecki, use he, him pronouns. I live in the Central District and I'm an architect and urban designer for my day job at Perkins Eastman. Let's see who.
About
Anyone
Radhika?
from staff, thanks.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Radhika Nair. I use she, her pronouns. I live in Northeast Seattle in Wedgwood, and I'm an urban planner. I'll pass it to Vanessa. I'm not sure who has gone.
I think we'll wrap commissioners up with Margaret.
Hi, I'm Margaret Zellis. I use she, her pronouns. I live in the Fremont, Ballard area, and my day job is that I am a law student at UW, getting ready for a career in land use and environmental law.
Thanks, Margaret. And if you could turn up your volume just a little bit on your end, you were a bit soft there. I think we go to staff now. Robin.
Hi, Robin McGonigal. I use she, they pronouns, and I live on Vashon Island, and I'm staff to the commission.
Morning, everyone. Olivia Baker, I use she, her pronouns, and I'm also staff to the commission.
Good morning, I'm John Hoy. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm also staff to the commission.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Vanessa Murdoch. I am the executive director of the Seattle Planning Commission, and I thank you all for coming, both commissioners and members of the public, and I use she, her pronouns. And with that, I'll turn it back to Matt.
Okay, great. Let's see. Let's see. Our first, well, let's see, a couple things. We have one item on the agenda, which is the continued discussion of the centers and corridors as part of the framework to implement the One Seattle plan. Before we get to that, I would like to ask for a motion to approve the February 12th, 2026 minutes.
Rose motions.
Oh. Jinx.
Okay. Anyone second? Okay, thank you, Zia. All right. Are there any changes or discussion? Okay, hearing none, I will call for a vote. All in favor, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Any opposed? Hearing none. Any abstentions? Okay, also none. All right. The minutes are approved. All right. Next commission meeting, our next neighborhood or housing and neighborhoods committee meeting is scheduled for next Thursday, March 5th from 7:30 to 9 a.m. online via the Teams platform, and the next full commission meeting is Thursday, March 12th from 3 to 5:30 p.m. All right, Vanessa has some announcements.
Great. Thank you, Matt. As we noted before, this is a hybrid meeting with most commissioners participating online. We've got a number of members of the public. I'd like to welcome them. During the meeting, there will be opportunities for questions and comments from commissioners. We will be using the chat function of MS Teams for commissioners to join the discussion queue. Please don't put substantive comment in the chat because members of the public who are dialing in cannot see that. Members of the public who are joining online can, but we want to make sure all of our conversation is available for everybody who is interested in hearing. In terms of public comment, we're providing 3 different ways to provide public comment, either in person or submitted to me in writing via email. Or if you are joining us on MS Teams, please raise your hand in the Teams app to be recognized to speak. And if you're dialing in by phone to the meeting, please email me at Vanessa, VANESSA .Murdock, MURDOCK at seattle.gov and indicate your name and the phone number you're calling from so that you can be recognized to speak. I've received 1 public comment emailed to me prior to the meeting that I will read after Matt makes some comments about our public comment.
Okay. All right. The Commission provides time for public comment at all meetings. A reminder that we do not hold public hearings, as we're an advisory body, and that we make recommendations to the leaders. Let's see. Individuals who make comments to the Commission should remember that the mayor and council are the ones who ultimately have the call. But we do encourage individuals and organizations to provide their comments appropriately. I invite the members or individuals in the audience to offer public comment, and please keep your comments to 2 minutes. All right. We have a public comment?
We do. Thanks, Matt. So I'm going to read the public comment that was emailed to me, and then I'll check to see if I've received an email or if any of those members of the public listening in have raised their hand in Teams. Dear council members, I am writing as a resident of the Morgan Junction in West Seattle to provide formal public testimony on the Centers and Corridors legislation currently before City Council. I live at 6356 39th Avenue Southwest on the northeast corner of 39th Avenue Southwest and Southwest Morgan Street, and I request that this statement be entered into the public record for the One Seattle Plan. Regarding the last meeting of the Planning Commission, on February 12th, near the end of the meeting, commissioners emphasized the importance of ensuring a high-quality living environment for future residents of the proposed 4-story developments along the 5 urban corridors under consideration. Matt specifically noted that width restrictions on LR2 development often force deeper buildings with limited natural light conditions that diminish livability. I ask you to carry that same concern for livability as you consider the impacts of LR2 zoning on our neighborhood 39th Avenue Southwest. It is important to clarify 39th Avenue Southwest is not an urban corridor. It is a mature, quiet, tree-lined residential street composed of single-family homes, many of which already contribute to housing supply through ADUs. Rezoning 39th Avenue Southwest to LR2 could in time create a shadowed canyon-like corridor that would degrade air quality, natural light, and the overall health of the Morgan Junction neighborhood. Key impacts of LR2 rezoning on 39th Avenue Southwest: loss of sunlight and decline in vegetation. The proposed 4-story massing would significantly reduce sunlight on both sides of the street. This threatens the health of mature trees and established landscaping that buffer noise, support birds, and contribute to residents' mental well-being. Interior plant life, an important source of air purification and emotional stability, would also be affected. Diminished light, natural light, and reduced quality of life. Natural light is essential to mental clarity, emotional health, and daily functioning. Longtime residents who have lived with consistent daylight for decades would experience a sudden and severe reduction in both direct and ambient light. This is not a minor inconvenience. It is a fundamental change to the livability of a stable residential street where many homeowners are already contributing to housing through ADUs. Decline in air quality. Reduced vegetation combined with increased density, more vehicles, more pets, more activities will inevitably degrade air quality. The consequences of poor air quality are well understood and should not be dismissed. Loss of iconic West Seattle views and community identity. A continuous 60-foot wall of buildings would erase Western light and eliminate the sweeping views of Puget Sound and the Olympic Mountains that define the Morgan Junction experience. The downhill approach on Morgan Street from 35th Avenue Southwest offers one of West Seattle's most uplifting, universally accessible vistas enjoyed by pedestrians, cyclists, drivers, bus riders, and families alike. Blocking this shared public experience is neither wise nor beneficial to community well-being. I'm afraid that's about the 2-minute mark. So I will be sure to email this comment along to planning commissioners, and this comment will also be included in our minutes that will be approved on the 12th of March. And I'm now looking at.
Attribute that. Did you say who that was from?
I can attribute that. That comment was from Jenny Pullman, West Seattle resident since 2002. And I'm just looking. I have an email, but it's not about a public comment. It's a sales manager. So that concludes our public comment, and I'll turn it back to Matt.
Is he there? I might have lost Matt temporarily. Not seeing him.
Or is he on mute?
No, I don't actually see him
Oh.
in the list.
He's not on the call.
He must have lost
Oh,
connection.
we need Matt.
We're just going to give Matt Hutchins, who's chairing the meeting, a moment to get back on the call. And if after a minute he cannot join us, then staff will wing it.
Can your vice chair or co-chair step in?
Yeah, I can take over if that would be helpful. I have the chair's minutes up.
Thanks, CEO. Did you see my email from earlier this morning?
Yes.
Regarding a slight change? Okay, thanks.
I did.
Please go ahead. Go ahead then. Thanks, CEO.
Where are we? We are at public comment. Okay. So my understanding is, well, okay, Vanessa, I saw your email. But let me confirm the plan. So our first item on the agenda and our only item on the agenda is to discuss centers and corridors legislation. We're continuing our discussion on the centers and corridor legislation currently under consideration at Seattle City Council. The legislation is part of the implementing framework for the One Seattle plan passed in December. We were going to have OPCD staff, but due to some scheduling complications, we don't have staff with us today. So instead, I think this is an internal to the commission conversation on the legislation. Is that accurate, staff?
I emailed him.
What's not accurate is that you do have the planning director. I mean, you do have the planning director on the call.
Okay, great. Well,
Good
OPCD
morning.
Director Rico is joining us to help with setting some of the context for the discussion. And SPC staff is going to summarize commission comments to date, and then we'll spend the remaining time discussing the legislation. Thanks for joining, Rico.
Of course.
Great. Yeah, thank you, Rico. Sorry, I had indicated that you wouldn't be available and then saw that you were on the call, but wasn't sure if you were just listening in or whatnot. So thank you for joining us at our early morning meeting. Staff is going to provide just a very brief context for our discussion. And then if you have any high-level comments or any comments that you'd like to make before we get into the discussion, that would be great. You could go to the next slide, please. So just wanted to set the context a little bit for the Centers and Corridors legislation that was transmitted from the Office of Planning and Community Development to Seattle City Council at the end of January. And this legislation is part of the implementation framework for the One Seattle Plan that was adopted in December of last year. We had a briefing from OPCD at our February 12th meeting on the legislation. Then we had a preliminary working session at our Land Use and Transportation Committee last Thursday, which brings us today to continue discussion. And then at the March 12th meeting, our plan right now is to review a draft comment letter that staff will prepare based on the comments today, and those leading up today, and then approve the final letter at the full commission meeting. I'd like to remind everybody that this legislation was first released in draft form, not as legislation, but as a proposal in October of 2024. And that was after outreach to neighborhoods and communities across Seattle that continued throughout 2025. So this legislation, as I mentioned before, helps implement the One Seattle Plan that was 4 years in development and adopted in December of last year. The schedule you see before you on the screen, or that you can hear if you're listening on the phone, is in order to help inform council's deliberation. Council's first meeting, council's first select committee on the comprehensive plan considering this legislation will be on March 19th. There will be 2 public hearings on April 6th and May 29th. And then there are 2 subsequent meetings of the select committee scheduled for June 4th and June 18th. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to John to give us a little context, additional context on what you all have said to date on this legislation. And then we'll invite Rico to say any comments if he has any, and then start a discussion amongst commissioners.
Great. Okay. Thanks, Vanessa. So just as a reminder, as Vanessa said, the Centers and Corridors legislation was introduced in January, and this most recent draft of the proposal, the commission previously commented on earlier draft back at the end of 2024. And so we had a discussion at the Land Use and Transportation Committee last week based on some of the comments that the commission had previously made on the draft rezoning proposal. But our comments today will be on the proposal as was introduced last month. So just as a reminder, the Centers and Corridors legislation is intended to allow more apartments and condos in both centers and corridors that are newly designated in the One Seattle Plan, comprehensive plan that was adopted in December. The legislation includes rezones in the newly adopted neighborhood centers throughout the city, in new and expanded urban centers, and along frequent transit routes. The proposed legislation also makes minor changes to development standards in both the low-rise and mid-rise zones. Next slide, please. So the next several slides I'm going to summarize are based on comments that were made both at the February 12th full Planning Commission meeting when Brendan Staley from OPCD introduced the legislation, as well as comments made at last Thursday morning's Land Use and Transportation Committee meeting. So this is a summary of commissioner comments to date on the current proposed legislation. And I've tried to group them by themes. So you will see where commissioner comments to date have landed along certain themes. First of all, a very, very high level theme is to remember the context of where this legislation falls in context of the recently adopted comprehensive plan. This legislation is not a plan. It is to implement the adopted One Seattle Comprehensive Plan, consistent with that plan's goals and vision. There was a comment that any modifications to the proposed legislation would diminish the intent of the One Seattle Plan. And the recommendation was to summarize the intent of this legislation and threats to eat away at the vision by changing or amending the proposed legislation. Commissioners recommended that we point to the context of how we arrived here and to remind the City Council that this legislation is the result of 4 years of public engagement. And lastly, on this slide, the Planning Commission hopes that the City Council will consider all public comments in an equitable way as they start deliberations on this legislation. Next slide. Again, under the category of remembering the context of this legislation, the Planning Commission comments, we can help the City Council understand the Centers and Corridors legislation relative to the whole comprehensive plan and provide some technical amendments to help them understand the details. Planning Commission says it would be helpful to provide some images to illustrate what we are proposing. And this is a comment that has come up several times. Start our comments to the City Council with the positives related to this legislation. It was recommended that we provide examples of how relatively small technical changes can improve the proposal without eroding livability embedded in the legislation. Okay, the next category of comments is lead with equity. Commissioner comments stated that grounding our comments in an equity lens is important. We understand that many areas of proposed rezones have been removed in this current version of the legislation. And those areas are shown in pink or light red on the zoning map. Many of these pink areas are in direct response to communities that are not happy with the original proposal that came out in the fall of 2024. The commissioners have said that we recommend holding on to what is proposed in this legislation, because further removal will erode achievement of the comprehensive plan vision that was adopted back in December. Another comment was, there is a point at which the plan is scaled back so much that it would be no longer. Next slide. Commissioners commented that there appears to be an emphasis on increasing floor area ratio in most zones, with the comment that emphasis on increasing FAR may hide where certain areas were swapped out for others. There was a comment that all of the areas that have been proposed for removal are in wealthy areas. And does this proposal truly represent the whole city? Commissioners recommended overlaying the OPCD's equity map with the areas that were reduced in this proposal, and to emphasize the cultural richness that will come with these rezones. The next category of comments was specific to the proposed legislation's zoning and development standards. There was a comment that the low-rise 1 LR1 and low-rise 2, the LR2 zones are obsolete, and that these zones will not result in new development. Just relative to that comment, I do want to state that during his presentation, Brendan Staley from Office of Planning and Community Development did emphasize that there is no low-rise 1. There is no low-rise 1 in this proposed centers and corridors legislation. Another commission comment was that the commission would like to see urban design improvements in the low-rise 2 and mid-rise 2 zones with no side yard setbacks, and that the development standards should encourage courtyards as social spaces for residents to get to know their neighbors. The next category is on the frequent transit route corridors. There was a comment that previous Planning Commission comments have included expanding opportunities for housing to a full block away from frequent transit routes, rather than the current proposal, which is only the one property along those frequent transit routes. There was a comment that studies that have shown that bus rapid transit has shown to have positive impacts on land values, and specifically a 5 to 10 minute walk shed represents up to 25% increase in property values in those areas. And an overarching comment that the Planning Commission should make sure that they are advocating for these frequent transit corridors. A couple more comments on frequent transit route corridors. Planning Commission says if we couple access to transit and rezones, we are identifying that increasing housing diversity could potentially improve opportunity to generate wealth for those who may be able to purchase in these areas. And then there was a few questions related to the corridors. Is it possible to reach out to Seattle Department of Transportation for data on property values along arterials? Can we request the numbers related to commercial opportunities also? Are we overall increasing or decreasing access to commercial opportunities? And a comment that these requests would most likely require consultant support for fairly rigorous statistical analysis. However, our comment letter could encourage the City Council to request that information. That is a fairly brief summary of Commissioner comments to date based on the last 2 meetings where this proposal has been discussed. I just want to go over the next steps as we move into preparing our comment letter. So here we are today at the February 26th full commission meeting where we will have discussion. A comment letter will be prepared in the next week based on comments, the comments that I just shared, as well as comments today. That draft comment letter should be prepared and sent to the commissioners by next Friday, the March 6th. At the next full commission meeting, which is March 12th, that is an opportunity to review and discuss the draft comment letter. Any revisions to that draft comment letter would be made after the March 12th meeting and would be sent out to commissioners by Friday, March 20th. And at the March 26th full commission meeting is the chance to approve the final letter at that full commission meeting. So that's what I have to share. Back to the chair.
Yes.
Great. Thank you. let's see. Yeah, I'm back. Sorry, I dropped out there. Let's see. Since do we still have Rico on the line?
I believe so.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay, great. Rico, did you want to address anything? First off, I know not in detail relative to our questions, but in general.
Yeah, so I'd want to acknowledge yesterday Vanessa sent me a compilation of I think like 15 detailed technical questions from the commission. I'm gonna sit down with Michael Hubner and Brennan in our office to review them and put together a set of responses. Looking at your calendar and the milestones on March 6th and March 12th, we'll try to get responses back to you that can inform your draft comment letter. But I imagine it would still make sense for us to come back to the commission in your next meeting to go through our responses. Does that make sense?
Yeah, we would appreciate that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we can plan on that. I appreciate the summary of responses thus far from the commission. I think that I'm gonna, while we're in this meeting today, I'm gonna see if I can track down. There was a presentation that we made for the mayor's office to walk them through the why of reductions that were made between the October 24 draft and the draft that was the final that was adopted on December 16th last year. Because I think that might help provide some additional context. So I'll try to see if I can pull that up here in the next 10 or 15 minutes. I just have to go find it.
Okay. Great. Anything else?
Not off the top of my head.
Okay. Okay.
Thanks, Rico.
Of course.
Let's see. I don't have access to the chat right now, so I don't know if people have raised their hands relative to wanting to add comment on this topic.
Michaela has her hand, or Michaela has put her name in the chat, and I would encourage not only comments, but if commissioners have clarifying questions on what has been said to date, we can try and clarify that. I realize not everybody has been at all three meetings that we've had, or both meetings that we've had thus far on this topic. So with that, thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I was at the first meeting with Brennan, but not the subsequent two. And so I hate to be that person who's gonna ask questions that have already been answered or take us in a different direction. But I have a strong belief that this approach of kind of an extremely narrow half block in center or corridor zoning strategy is not aligned with the city's own comprehensive plan goals that seek to promote health. If you go through the comp plan and you do a word search on the word health, you'll get a bunch of hits in the land use section around development standards that should promote the health and safety of residents and whatnot. That includes land use policy 1.3, 1.6, G4, and 11.5. And I think collectively it points to that the city wants to achieve that goal as well. And I also question whether or not this corridor strategy, the limited depth in which they're going into the blocks, is consistent with the countywide planning policies, housing chapter policies that seek to promote the health and wellness, and think about how and where we're siting our housing. So that's just kind of my frustration, is that we just continue to be told with all of the phases we want to keep this moving forward. We want to get it across the finish line. Let's pass what Mayor Harrell's put forward. And I just feel like with every additional decision and final action that is made, we keep losing our opportunity and our leverage to really push for something that we know, and like this commission has had so many conversations about the need to be increasing housing diversity within communities, not just along major transit corridors. Doing so releases the pressure valve on so much of that development needing to happen right on the arterial. It gives residents who are more likely to be renters in those higher density developments a choice to live off of the arterial. And I just don't really see a strong articulation of how this strategy is promoting the health and well-being of the people who would be living in those buildings. And I know that like King County Public Health has done some kind of analysis of which arterials in this county are actually the most concerning and the most polluting. They themselves were trying to deliberate how far off of an arterial should they push for. And I think I've heard them float 500 feet off of the arterial and a half a block off of an arterial. Like if you just Google how many feet are in half a block, it's like 280 feet or something like that. So this is just doubling down on some of the environmental injustices that I think are baked into the One Seattle plan. And that's just like I can't continue to like engage in this process without saying that out loud, and that I'm really disappointed. And we have a new mayor and a new council, and there's so much opportunity here to make this better. And I really I know that they're saying let's pick it up next year, which is what we might have to do, but okay. I do have like some technical questions around the mandatory upzones that have to happen related to certain zoning and around certain transit stations. And so I was wondering if one of the questions that Rico could take back and bring back to us is to what extent does that overlay on top of this? Because those might be the areas where there's already some planned within a half-mile watershed up zones, and that might help me understand sort of that strategy. And I also was wondering if they had done any health analysis related to which of these arterials are actually most likely to result in a shorter lifespan and worse life outcomes for the individuals living on the arterials than others. I just would strongly encourage us as a commission to play a role in facilitating some kind of, this is not the only city that has been struggling with this like tension of the underdeveloped part of our town is next to a freeway. Like these are things that we should be talking about. And I just don't feel like our strategy should be to address the housing needs for people at all income levels should just be, let's put them in the areas where nobody else wants to live.
Thanks, Michaela. I believe the mandatory zoning around transit is coming in a future phase.
Yes.
But we will take that back and get an answer to that.
You're right. Brennan did brief us on that timing. It's just how we know that it's mandated to happen in certain areas. And so how much of these corridors are actually going to end up being deeper and than they are on the maps now because of that requirement. And maybe you could add another question is if the bus rapid transit or the frequent transit stop moves, what happens? Does the zoning move with it? Does the zoning need to move with it? Does it make it harder for Metro to do service revisions? Is this accounting for any service revisions they think Metro will do when all of our new light rail stations open? Anyway. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
No, that's good. Matt, I'm just reading, Rico has his hand up and then Dylan G and then Deanna.
Okay. Rico.
Michaela, I thank you for your observations and your questions. I'd want to respond to them directly, and I'd like to provide some clarity so that there is no misunderstanding about where we are. OPCD and the new administration have every intention of putting into our Phase 4 supplemental environmental impact statement the expansion of upzones to 2 blocks on either side of frequent transit corridors. And that will be all frequent transit corridors that are as defined by Seattle Department of Transportation. That scoping is not something that we have on paper at this time. That is not a consultant that we have on board at this time. I'm just speaking to what our intention is as staff and the discussions that we have had with the administration that has just been brought on board. So Tsunari is my portfolio manager, Alex Hudson, who's the policy lead for livability. We've talked with them about that change and why it is important. I believe that this new administration is totally in alignment with that perspective, and we are very excited about that. I want to be super clear. We are not trying to miss opportunity right now because of the environmental impact statement and the work that was done for the comp plan that was just adopted. We legally do not have the ability to expand the upzones along frequent transit corridors as part of the current centers and corridors legislation, because what was suggested in the draft environmental impact statement about doing a larger upzone along corridors was not moved forward from the draft to the final preferred alternative. The final EIS only studied the final the preferred alternative, which was half block off of each corridor, or half block off of each side of the corridor. I apologize that is a legal limitation that we have at this time, and that we are addressing it as quickly as we can. To answer your other question about HB 1491, which is the state legislation that concerns itself with upzones at transit-oriented development sites. We are waiting for direction from, or guidance from the state. OPCD and I myself am sitting on a newly formed committee that will be working with Department of Commerce staff related to the development of that guidance for the TOD, future TOD upzones. So we have a seat at that table. We have suggested strongly to mayor's office that the TOD upzone work that we will begin with Phase 4 January of next year, alongside the guidance that we will get from Department of Commerce at that time, is very well paired with doing upzones along all of our transit corridors. So the timing lines up very well, and it will be responsive to community need, the environmental concerns that you have raised, and what the state is requiring related to TOD locations. Understanding that the work that we will do to do upzones along transit corridors will be in excess of what the state is requiring by design, doing 2 blocks on either side of all transit corridors is well in excess of what the TOD 1491 legislation directs jurisdictions to do. Shoot, there was one other piece of that. You asked about the kind of movement of bus lines. That this is one which has come up for me a few times, and I will admit that it's challenging. The reason it's challenging is because it means that there's a piece of the work where transportation engineering and transportation management is now in the seat of informing what land use looks like. And what we know is that transportation lines change all the time. I'm hearing some feedback. Someone must have just, okay. And we, stating the obvious, King County Metro is in charge of bus rapid transit lines, where they go, what their frequency is, all of that good work. City of Seattle is in a response position there. We are reactive to the decisions that are made by Metro. I think that we will do the best that we can. We rely on SDOT's analysis and data related to their definition of frequent transit corridors, and don't want to do anything that duplicates or undermines that work. Our land use designations will follow the data that we get from them. If there are changes to that map over time, we will need to have that active discussion about how does that change the land use designations. So I know that's not super satisfying. That is one piece that I think that we are still going to just have to react to the real-time data that we have at the time that we're doing the land use designations, and we will always be in that kind of call and response process.
Thank you.
Did I miss anything there in terms of the list of questions?
No, and I was very appreciative that the new administration is listening to a wide range of feedback on the plan, including looking back at, kind of this consistent comment that a lot of different community stakeholders have been asking for a long time around expanding the footprint deeper into neighborhoods. So just wanted to say thank you.
Of course.
Thank you, Rico.
And
Matt,
Yeah, I just wanted, and did you say 2 blocks to either side or 2 blocks? I know that you put a kind of
I said
goal on
2
that.
blocks I said 2 blocks on either side because that is the direction and recommendation that has been made through our community engagement process.
Okay, great. I just wanted to clarify that. Great. Let's see. Who is next on the list? Vanessa, can you assist me?
yeah, I believe it's Dylan G and then Deanna.
Great.
Cool. Makes sense. Hey, Rico. Thanks for the clarification or the update on the corridors. My question was going to be a follow-up on the corridors, but hearing that, I need some time to digest it, but it's really encouraging. So excited to hear that expansion. So I guess another one of my questions is a curiosity regarding, I guess, how the centers and corridors up zones relate to, and if they do relate to, the racial and social equity index. If there was, I know that map is used to prioritize investment in different areas of the city, and is it a part of how OPCD determine zoning, or is that kind of a separate process that's used for different, I guess, different planning elements in the city? And that's kind of the first part. And the second is a curiosity regarding, and I guess this is to inform us, inform the Planning Commission as we work with council, as we hear public comment. It's a curiosity as to how do we take the input from the public, but at the same time put this again, this racial and social equity lens over it to ensure that we're getting a cross section of input from our entire city, and not just a heavy set of comments maybe from one portion of the city that has an oversized influence over what happens in their area. The question being that if we have a set of neighbors in one community that have some comments, would like to see changes, ensuring that we're not losing density in one location, and then the other areas of the city are having to kind of hold on to that density. So I guess the question really is, how do we take public comment and ensure we're responding to it, but doing so in an equitable way and ensuring that residents of the entire city are being represented? It's kind of a complicated question, but curious if you could respond to that aspect, how you're taking input, how you've taken input in the past, and ensure that there is a kind of a racial and social equity lens to how we respond to that input.
You're on mute, Rika.
Sorry. Thank you for the question. And what I mentioned to Vanessa this morning was that I would take that question just related to the data-driven piece of it, and take it back to our data team so we could provide you a more detailed response than what you're going to hear from me right now. As you all know, in our original draft of comprehensive plan zoning concepts, we included one that was very specifically driven by race and social justice considerations and very specific to comments that we were hearing from some of our stakeholders and organizations in Rainier Valley, where, as you all know, there was a specific policy framework that was decided on in 1994 that ensured that the large percentage of our density and accommodation for 5/2 building construction all is now exists along our Rainier Valley corridor, and the urban centers along that corridor. We created a concept for neighborhood residential at the time, to do a smaller upzone with lower height, less density in those areas because of this issue. It was decided in the previous administration that would mean that with the upzone that those properties would have less financial value than other areas of the city, and that was not equitable. And so we're always looking at trade-offs. I think that this comprehensive plan, which was just adopted in December, represents the addition of a large amount of density in areas of the city that previously did not include density, which is to the benefit of all of the residents of the city. And I do understand that there are uh, residents that are not in alignment with that vision. And I understand that what what our work has been in terms of responding to comments has been to try to be responsive to comments that we hear from folks in the North End, comments that we hear from folks in the South End, to respond to what we are hearing from all sides, and to find a balance that works for the singular plan that we have to adopt. I think that in that scenario, and I want to be clear, like when we come back in our next meeting, like whether Brennan is with me or whether I'm just providing response to the comment responses that we put together, like I can bring you more detail that is grounded in our data related work. At a high level, all of this work that we are doing has been driven by a need that we have to be responsive to what we are hearing from folks, and a need to balance those concerns and to have those decisions be rooted in a social equity discussion. That is the work of our office. And that none of that has changed over the course of this process. And I'm sorry, I may have glazed over part of your question. So if there's a piece of it that you want me to come back to that I skipped over.
No, I think that's pretty good, and I'll look forward to kind of the follow-up to get kind of into a little bit more detail. But yeah, I did just it's helpful hearing that. It does in looking at the map, that it's reflected in terms of where the additional capacity is being proposed, and just to kind of remind everybody that this additional capacity is the intent is to allow access, right, to these neighborhoods that have a wealth of amenity. And whenever we're seeing a reduction in this proposed capacity, we're reducing the amount of access that we're offering up to these neighborhoods. And so just when I see things like the Finney Neighborhood Center removed, that's a loss in terms of our residents being allowed access to kind of some of these really, really nice sort of neighborhood areas with a lot of amenity and a lot of opportunity. So just kind of talking out loud to keep that in mind as we kind of get our comments together to council and remind council of what the intent is behind this plan. We don't want to see it whittled away. So yeah, thanks for that context, Rico.
Of course.
Thank you. Who was next on the queue?
Deanna.
Thank you.
Rico, thank you so much. That's been the most eloquent response we've gotten around the corridor. Foresight and intent of this administration and where this is headed, and I celebrate it so strongly. And I just want you to know that, we're really looking forward to that. I know on behalf of the commission, we would be more than willing to support anything that you all might need and, to advance the EIS and considerations in that direction. I did want to mention with regards to that, we often hear this chicken and egg conversation about, placement of transit and frequent transit routes vis-a-vis density. And we all know that, this is well known, but we kind of tend to maybe not center the fact that land use and density needs to come first for transit service to follow, even though it seems like it's the other way around. And so it is this chicken and egg situation where
the land use does drive where service and demand and future ridership potential and increasing fair revenue and justifying infrastructure expenditures and investments go. So I think putting forth a vision of where these corridors and the expanded TOD perspective and up zones happen should have the opportunity to plant where we want to see frequent transit. And so I think that would be very important. And I'm sure the EIS will definitely evaluate VMT comparisons of these scenarios. But in the end, this is going to be the most successful strategy in reducing VMT and reducing all the associated effects of, car dependency. And so just wanted to hopefully encourage that the EIS does take a hard look at the different VMT reduction scenarios from these proposed improvements. And of course, kind of remind ourselves and center that density is what gives opportunity and possibility for frequent transit service to be implemented in the city. But thank you, and looking forward to it, and I celebrate it strongly.
Thank you. I would also say that as we do the small s scoping for the phase 4 supplemental environmental impact statement, we will benefit, and the administration will benefit from your guidance regarding what is in that scope. So I would just say that there's an opportunity there, and so we should be in conversation around that perspective work.
Wonderful. Thank you, Rico.
I know that there's only 20 minutes left. I was able to find we put together a few slides that was kind of comparison of the October 2024 proposal to what was accepted in or what was adopted in December 16th of last year. Do you want me to share those slides really quickly? I mean, I can just limit it to 5 slides, if that's helpful.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that would be really helpful, since it's a big part of the context.
Okay. Let's see. Go to Windows. Go to Mayor's Office. All right. Are you seeing the deck? Okay.
Yes. Now.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Excuse me. So as part of providing an orientation to the new administration regarding the adopted comprehensive plan, as well as the draft centers and corridors legislation, they did ask this question about the changes between October 2024's draft and the draft legislation that we sent down in January. They also, part of their questioning was also driven by the analysis that the urbanists had put together related to the legislation and the maps that we sent down to council. The proposal obviously reflects updated center boundaries. We incorporated a lot of the feedback that we heard through the direct communication that OPCD led, as well as what feedback we got from council members and from stakeholder groups and from community walks that we were a part of, that were organized through council offices. Obviously, there were selected removals, height reductions. We also did a ton of work to address split zone lots. The image that you see here, and it'll show up in another slide too. The pink boundary represents the outline of the original proposed upzone definition and neighborhood neighbor center proposal from October 24, and then what is the colored blocks is the reduced upzone proposals. So through council amendments, well, I should rephrase that. There were council amendments in 10 urban and neighborhood center locations. There was a shifting of the Finney Ridge neighborhood center to East Ballard. So it wasn't a loss of density per se, it was a relocation of where that density shows up on the map. And then we did make modifications to provide smaller expansions in urban centers without light rail and bus rapid transit. So that is some of the reductions to what's on the map. Having done a few of the walks myself, I can tell you that, you know, this is the important work. It's a big city. It's hard to do a block by block walk everywhere. But we did try to get feet on the ground everywhere that we could. And I think that making changes from the October 24 draft to the final draft, we did make changes that were responsive to concerns around environmentally critical areas, areas where we had large changes in topography over short distances, and where we had undeveloped rights of way and irregular and unusual lot sizes. This is a snapshot on the right side of a part of town where we had proposed an upzone that was between two riparian corridors, and it just didn't make sense to do that. So there were definitely adjustments that we made, a lot of adjustments that we made that were based on observations, feet on the ground, and kind of data-driven issues. We did make some adjustments also related to frequent transit routes and steep streets. The change in transit service in Magnolia, we reduced the proposed upzone as a direct result of that. We also made a reduction in response to acknowledging the existence of a couple of historic boulevards, including 10th Avenue West. Split zones, Brennan will be able to speak about the split zone work much better than I. There were literally, I think, there were hundreds of lots that we identified, and wherever it was possible to do so, took the higher of the two zones at the split lot locations and brought them up uniformly to the higher zoning. So they're actually, it's very much details in the weeds, but I think that the number was something like, I think there were over 250 sites or 250 plots where we upzoned as a result of resolving those split zone lots. Like I said, I can't, don't rely on me for the numbers there. I can come back and Brennan can give me a solid number. I think that was, oh, and then we changes to development standards. You guys already know all of this. This was just a summary slide that we put together for the new administration regarding the development standard changes that are part of the centers and corridors work. So this was the last slide that would be important to the discussion we're having. Should I take down the slides, or do you guys have any questions on those handful of slides?
I just want to absorb this last slide here for a little bit.
Okay. Okay.
Let's see. Do we have other folks in the chat? Vanessa, can you assist?
We do not. Deanna put a comment in that I'm going to ask her to read aloud. And then Dylan is after that. And I will note that if I'm remembering correctly, I think we saw a number of these slides at the February 12th full commission meeting, and I'm happy to send that deck out to commissioners.
Okay. Vanessa, if for any reason the 5 slides that I shared just now, if you need those, just let me know.
Okay.
We have them. Brennan presented at the February 12th meeting, and these are the same slides.
All right, that's great. That's great.
Thank you, Rico.
Okay. Deanna?
Yes, I apologize. I just put it here because I didn't want to forget after hearing Rico's response and on the scoping, et cetera. Rico, we'll be happy to elaborate down the line when that's appropriate. But for the future EIS scoping, as I mentioned, VMT comparisons around the different scenarios for upzoning, a 10-minute walk shed versus, the only half a block context. Obviously, the potential to increase quantity and diversity of housing supply, which I'm sure will be evaluated. But I think an economic development question that would be valuable, even if it doesn't actually affect the environmental impact assessment or put a lot of weight to it, but the opportunity to study and understand the potential benefits to local businesses by this potential increase in foot traffic to support local economies. We all know, a Paris example, why Paris is successful is because that consistent density with ground level activation and businesses, just feeds directly all the, potential customers of these businesses making, jobs, opportunity, and investing in a business in the city much more successful. So an understanding of the economic development effects of this would be also interesting to understand. And then, of course, the trade-offs of this is always understanding the continuous trends of vehicle ownership. Those don't necessarily change, these upzones and what the city offers doesn't change the appetite of people to own cars. And so how to assess vehicle ownership trends and what this might represent in terms of on-street parking pressures by household, right? If we add X number of households and we assume X number of vehicles per household on average on the, in the city, what would that represent in terms of on-street parking pressures? Understanding that, of course, we would encourage no parking requirements on these developments, but does demand or requiring it to entertain an integrated travel demand management and parking demand management in these areas as a recommendation of the EIS. So I just didn't want those ideas to be to lose me, and so I wrote them down here in the chat, but now have the opportunity to express them. Thank you. Oh, you're muted.
That was very detailed. that is going to be very, I think that what I think from what you just suggested, I think that the large majority of that are things that we would probably be considering related to the phase 4 SEIS scoping, I think. And to the extent that's the case, I would get all that written down so that we can include it in our scoping process.
Happy to. Thank you, Rico.
Hey, Matt, this is Vanessa. We've got 6 minutes left, and I'm just curious. I know Dylan is in the queue, but I'm wondering if there are commissioners on the call who haven't had an opportunity to comment or question. If they want to put their name in the queue, please do so, and maybe go ahead, Dylan. Maybe try to keep it short because we've only got 6 minutes.
Sure, yeah. If anybody else has a question, I'm happy to step aside, but I will keep it brief. It's kind of a high-level question for Rico while we have you here. As we go into this process with the with City Council, just curious to get your thoughts with the understanding that, our intent is in many ways aligned with OPCD's intent of trying to, maintain this comprehensive plan, maintain the increased access to the neighborhoods and the associated their associated amenities to increase this access by adding housing equity across the city. And curious, Rico, if you have thoughts on how best the Planning Commission might interact with council, kind of what areas of the plan you guys are focused on in terms of seeing the potential to maybe have them challenged, and how the Planning Commission might support the comprehensive plan as proposed going forward. So just looking for advice as to how we work with council in this process going forward to maintain the vision of the comprehensive plan. I'm curious if you have thoughts on that.
Sound.
You're on mute again.
Sorry. So I feel like we are in early days related to, I mean, in the sense that we, excuse me, in the sense that we just sent down the Centers and Corridors draft legislation at the end of January. We have started doing briefings with individual council members because we haven't gotten through that process. I don't have a lot of good feedback right now about how council members are responding to the package that they've received. So I think it's a good question for us to continue to be in conversation about. We have suggested that, just as with phase 1, OPCD staff will make ourselves available for council members to do briefings or do neighborhood walks or go to community meetings to talk about the proposed maps and any refinements that council wants to consider. We also have a briefing to the committee of the whole, which will now be chaired by Councilmember Lynn. That next briefing is on March 19th at 2 p.m. So I would say that that's a great opportunity for commissioners to hear public comment that's provided at that time, but then also hear some responses directly from council members and questions that they'll have for us as staff. Dylan, I know that's probably not super helpful, but that we're building the plane while we're flying in.
Sure. Yeah. It'll be an ongoing conversation. Thanks.
All right. Okay, we are at 8:59. I hope, I don't know if anyone has put their name in the queue. Hopefully not at this point.
So Cecilia has her name in the queue.
Oh.
And Cecilia, if you want to just email
Yes.
me whatever your question or comment is, and I'll share it with Rico and the rest of the group.
Cool.
Okay.
I'll do that.
Okay, thank you. All right, Rico, thank you so much for your time this morning. It's been very informative. And thank you to all the commissioners. With that, we are adjourned.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Seems like we just need to come up with some